Chris Spatola, ESPN, Sirius XM. He's everywhere. Also a veteran of the United States Army. Sir, welcome to the show. Thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day to you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. I don't know what he's everywhere. What is that? What do you mean by that? That sounds pejorative.
No, you're like I turn the TV on and there's Chris Spatola's voice.
All right. Well, hey, you're watching the right things then, obviously.
100%. I have a Chris Spatola radar. I believe that directs me. Oh, there's Chris again. Like I heard you during the Duke exhibition game, which I thought was awesome. We're going to talk basketball. Before I get to hoops, just when it's Veterans Day. So, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about I'm sure the time you served, who you served with, and whatnot. So when I say Happy Veterans Day to you, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, and I always appreciate you putting so much into it. It's funny, Adam. Each year I think about different things, and this morning, my wife and I went through it together. Like we were out living in. I was first stationed in Oklahoma, and I was not this gung-ho military guy. I got to that point and I served proudly and I served as well as I could, but it was never what I had intended. I went to West Point to go play basketball. And so when I was finally out in the active Army and I was stationed out in Oklahoma and I had to drag, my wife and I had just gotten married and I had to drag her out there. We did it together, and it was interesting. It was funny. This morning we were sitting before the kids got up. She and I were sitting at the breakfast table, and she said, "Oh," and she doesn't get all that because she lived it, so she doesn't. She's not all in on happy,
right.
But she said, "Hey, thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day." And I was skeptical. Like, does she really mean this? What is she doing? Am I being had here? And I said, well, thanks. Thank you so much. I said, we did that together. And, I think we did it together. And so the thing that I've been thinking a lot about today is obviously we want to thank veterans and anybody who has served, but what these families commit to doing that, obviously wives, husbands, sons and daughters, all family of veterans, what you have to commit in order to make that work is significant. So that's what I was thinking about today, man.
I do find it very funny, as you heard me laughing, how, like, wait a second, there's something going on here.
Right.
My wife is thanking me. Like, I get that too at home, obviously not for military service, but for other reasons. But like, thank you for doing that. I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? I did something right. It's getting brought up. I must have done something wrong. So, the sports and the military are so intertwined. How do you feel about the association? I know sometimes it's paid, right? I'm like that in some ways bothers me, but maybe it shouldn't. But how does somebody who did serve? How do you process the intertwining of the sports world and the U.S. military?
Yeah, I mean it's been a process. I mean, I'll speak to you first as an athlete. I mean, I learned as much about leadership from being a cadet as I did from playing a sport and playing a sport at West Point, but playing a sport in general. I mean, obviously there are, to your point, there's a lot of intersection between what it means to be an athlete, to be on a team, and ultimately to be in the military and to serve. And, it's funny. Well, not funny, but it was very resonating for me, Adam. This was back in 2012. I went to the funeral for a friend of mine. He died in Afghanistan, somebody that I went to West Point with and served in Oklahoma with. And at his funeral, on the program, was written, "Who will go for us? Send me." And it's a Bible verse, and I'm not hugely religious, but that just on its face really resonated with me. This idea of, being out there for those to your left and your right, and who's willing to do this? Okay, I'll do it. Send me. And that was, that sort of, obviously, that can transcend anything. I mean, we have obviously a lot going on nationally now and within sport and all of that. But that's sort of, there's a nobility in that way of thinking. And I think that's where sort of that intersection between sport and the military really, really came through, that idea of selfless service and being about those who are around you. And that's what it's meant for me. And I think that's why, it's interesting. You see all these teams now that are doing this, summer Navy SEAL training and military training and all that, because of, all of that overlapping methodology and value systems, et cetera.
Tiger Woods used to train with Navy SEALs. We could actually blame the Navy SEALs for Tiger's deteriorating body, because he definitely overdid it. I'm really not blaming the Navy SEALs. Chris Spatola is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I know somebody you know very well, and we all do, although not quite at the same level, Mike Krzyzewski, who went to West Point. He was the point guard at West Point a couple of years before you were the point guard at West Point. And he's on the trip with Duke up at Army. He's probably, I don't know if he's the highest profile athlete, because he wasn't really a high profile athlete. We would have David Robinson for that, probably, at least in terms of modern athletes that served in the military or went to a military academy and then became a pro. But the significance of Duke playing at Army today is what to you?
Yeah, an incredible gesture by Scheyer to do that, and shows the way that dude thinks. Obviously thinking much bigger than simply about this moment in time and his program and should we be going to play at Army? Yeah, I think it's an incredible gesture on Jon's part. And to be honest, and you know this, Adam, like his players are better for it. I mean, his players after this experience. I know they were up there practicing yesterday and, had a chance to tour West Point. And for those athletes, that's going to be a lifetime memory. So I think he's doing his players a great service. And then to do it on Veterans Day, to the point we were making about families, to allow the West Point community to drink in Duke basketball, all of that outside of Coach K, it's an incredible gesture. And I think just a great moment. And then for Coach K, to have this, I was texting with him last night I think he's incredibly moved by it, Adam. And I think this is a guy, and he and I were similar in terms of, and you said a couple of years apart. Obviously, that was quite hyperbole on your part.
Well, he looks very young. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you still have dark hair, black hair at his age,
right.
that'll happen. But he and I were similar in the respect that we were not model cadets. It gets back to the point. Like I was not a GI Joe, and
right.
neither was Coach K. But what we took from that experience, that 4-year experience, was a value system that we've lived our lives with, and then what he coached with. And while his tone and the way he talked to players and the way he handled players, that changed as generations changed. But the value system and what he demanded based on that value system that he developed in his time as a cadet and then coaching at West Point, that he was never willing to compromise those things. And they served as the foundation for him, throughout his life. And so I think to be up there and they're honoring him and to have both of those worlds colliding on West Point's camp at Post, I think really means a lot to him at this point in his life. And again, it goes back to the gesture from Scheyer to do that.
Your thoughts quickly, Chris Spatola, and we have a few more minutes, but I want to try to get to a couple of other things and maybe even talk basketball. I don't know. But the Duke's program now versus Duke's program when you were an assistant there, now 15 or so years ago, right?
Yeah.
What is the evolution of the program? Obviously, the rules in college sports have changed, and that obviously has a tremendous impact on it. But When you look at this program today, does it look at all like the program when you were a coach there?
It does a little bit. I was there, Adam, towards the, ironically, right after Scheyer won the title. Like, we had gotten into the social media world, like the branding of Duke basketball became a real thing. And I don't think, things were presented to Coach K. Like they have a guy who headed up their social media, who I'm sure you've met, a guy named Dave Bradley, who, was way ahead of the curve, was way ahead of everybody, and had presented this stuff to Coach K. Here's what we want to do on this thing called Twitter. Here's what we want to do on this thing called Instagram. And I don't think Coach K had any idea what Dave was talking about. But to Coach K's credit, he believed in it, he bought into it, and invested in it. And so that stuff, I was at the infant stages of that, and to see how that has grown is pretty remarkable. I think Jon has modernized the program to the standpoint of just look at the staff. I mean, when I was there, I was the only non-Duke player who was on staff.
Yeah.
The way that Jon has now constructed his staff, he's gone outside of that paradigm, and I think it's a good thing. I really do. I think it's been good for Jon. So that, the composition of his staff looks a little bit different. And then the way he's going about recruiting is a little bit different than we did, but not significantly, but a little bit. So there are some subtle things, but and it's more of a modern day version of that program. And but there's still, if you look through, I mean, there's still the foundations of things that were laid, certainly when I was there, between 2007 and 2012, the infancy of some of those things, to see how it's grown is pretty incredible.
Final thing about that, is Jon, you never want to be the guy who follows the guy. You want to be the guy who follows the guy who follows the guy, because the shoes are just too big. And there are no bigger shoes anywhere than the ones that Mike Krzyzewski left behind. Is Jon better than you expected him to be?
He has been better more quickly. I always knew Jon was going to be a coach. I mean, he was the definition of a player's coach, or a coach's player, or however you want to phrase that. I mean, he was like the translator. He was, I mean, I'm telling you stuff you already know about Jon as a player. He was him. So you knew he was going to be a coach. The thing that's been so impressive to me is how he really has not lost a step. And as critical as, I'll just speak from my observations during that year in residence when they were doing the succession plan and, the Coach K went on his farewell tour, I was critical of that. I did not think that was a good thing, more so from the standpoint of how Coach K would be perceived, what it would do to him and his image long term. Turns out, I'm just a young, arrogant, guy speaking out of school, has no idea what he's talking about. That's where I think that year, specifically from a recruiting standpoint, where they were to sort of to have that overlap and that sort of, you go back to the military conversation we're having, the idea of a change of command, that's why you have it that way in the military. So there's a level of continuity. So the fact that it has come so quickly to Jon has been, that's been a little bit surprising.
I mean, he is super smooth in how he, in everything he does. I love Jon. I loved him as a player. I sort of, kept in touch with him when he was playing overseas. When he came back to the program as an assistant, he has been tremendous. Obviously, the success, I know they haven't won a national championship, because that's how success is unfortunately measured at Duke. If you haven't done that yet, you're still and now he's going to have to win not only one, but he probably has to win 5. Otherwise, the shadow is just too great. Before I let you go, are you excited for Triangle Area ACC basketball this year?
I am. And you know me, I keep it 100. I am, man. I had Carolina in their opener. I think there's a lot to like about them. And look, I went over and watched NC State practice during the summer, and I like the vibe. I don't know how good they're going to be. I think they're going to be, we will have time to break them down. I think there's a lot that they have to figure out. But I love the vibe, and I love everything about, I think, how this year is going to unfold. So I'm excited.
I thank you very much, Chris Spatola. You can follow him on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I don't care if it's changed its name. At Chris_Spatola. And you can also, he has his own website. You're a man ahead of his own time.
Thank you.
I thank you very much for everything, sir. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, my pleasure, Adam. Take care.
You got it. Chris Spatola here on the Adam Gold Show.